Hello, once again, wonderful people of YouTube land. It is I, your friend, WYLD ELF26. Hey, we're going to do another Stroll with WYLD ELF video. That's what I'm going to probably title it as Stroll with WYLD ELF, or maybe WYLD ELF Stroll. So we'll see how that goes. All right, guys. So we begin our stroll. And I'm not sure how long the video will be, but I was getting into a couple of thank yous I wanted to give to a couple different YouTubers. I wanted to give a thank you to a YouTuber named Cap'n Howdy, and I recently did a tribute shout to Slipstream GT, Mr. Mods, who makes some great mods, portables, and laptops out of classic vintage game systems. You should really check him out. He's got some really great products, and he does sell and commission orders to be made. So, and I also wanted to put a little spotlight out there. Of course, you know my friend Captain Frugal, and he's doing some good stuff now with his music studio. He's doing some more videos regarding music coming up, so you can look forward to that. He's assembling a custom guitar. He started out trading. He traded various things, traded up, that is, till he eventually had enough to purchase a full amalgamation guitar. So you can check his site for that. It was an interesting endeavor, and he's very well versed on music studio equipment and how to set your studio up. He's at like a professional level. And he's also very good with doing reviews on tech, general tech, and gamer tech. So you can check his backlog of videos for some of the different tech reviews and game reviews. All right, guys. Oh, and I want to say hello to a 1980s YouTuber channel, Shaneology. You'll notice it right away. It features a Skeletor that's very interactive with the YouTubers. And morning. But yeah, Shaneology. He's hilarious. He puts together some really good videos. 1980s pop culture, 1980s TV shows, mostly animated shows, and a lot of vintage collectibles that are in reference to franchises from the 1980s. So that's a lot of fun. All right, and as you know, and that allows me to give a description myself. I want to make it clear, because some people know and some people seem to not quite know. My channel is basically, it's all about 1990s and 1980s pop culture, especially retro gaming during those decades. And I want to point out the WYLD ELF is themed after one of the great icon games of the 80s. WYLD ELF is themed after Link from Legend of Zelda 2: Adventures of Link. And this is the Link that is also in the 1980s cartoon that was attached to the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. The one with the catchphrase, Well, excuse me, princess. You know, love that tagline. But yeah, and that's the look. It made sense, you know, the character originally had dark brown hair to go with his dark brown eyes that were almost black. He wore all green because he was in a forest setting, and as he fought off enemies, it's kind of a good thing to blend in with the forest. So his green tunic and brown sleeves and brown leggings and dark brown boots, you know, that was kind of good for that. It helped him do that. That's why the Zelda games with him wearing green and a green hat make all the sense in the world. And the more recent one, they changed it to blue and they got rid of his hat to reveal bright blonde hair and blue eyes, and I don't know. I don't think there's enough ventilation over there at the Nintendo building. They think up some weird stuff that makes no sense half the time. It's like that three-handled controller for the N64. You know, what was going on there? You know, people hate that controller. It did introduce analog sticks as kind of a commonality, but after PlayStation saw that and added analog sticks to their PlayStation controller, it was no contest. They had better analog sticks. Heck, even Saturn, Sega Saturn had what they call a 3D controller, which had an analog stick. And the general layout for the Saturn 3D controller is kind of the staple point for what later became the Dreamcast controller. But for some reason, they took a few of the buttons away on the Dreamcast. Don't know why. It's like, let's make a game that's a follow-up, more advanced graphics, but let's take a couple of buttons away, you know, because I guess our fan base is more simple than we originally gave them credit for. We need to have less buttons there so it doesn't confuse them. Or at least that's how I interpreted it. Who knows what decisions are made and how they go down in those boardroom meetings. Nowadays they only care about stockholders. They only care about keeping stockholders happy and impressing the neighbors, basically. Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, they're only concerned with impressing the neighbors and making bonzo sales on a game. If a studio, a dev team makes a game and it's not a #1 bestseller in the current video game market, well, they often fire half that dev team or the entire dev team and then use it as a threat to the next dev teams. You know, if you don't make this next one a #1 seller, you know what happened to the last dev team. So that's something. That's a sign of today's modern gaming. It's really bad too, because in today's DLC, heavily DLC, internet-dependent consoles in this modern gaming era, it's really a bad thing, because now a lot of the gamers of today have to wait quite a long time for a sequel game to be made to certain games, because these studios are going for outlandishly large, detailed environments in these games. And for some reason that necessitates having like a dev team of like 40 or more people. Sometimes additional studios brought in at the same time with their 40 or something people, and all for the sake of one game, because they want it to be some giant blockbuster seller. But here's the thing, not all of them can be giant blockbuster sellers. Sure, someone will have a good idea about something, they'll put it out there, and it will sell like unexpectedly. But with all these game decisions, the majority of them, at least on the parts of Sony and Microsoft, these decisions are being made from the boardroom, and it's usually sequels. It's usually sequels. They have a successful franchise with one game or another, and they know that they'll have a definite audience for it, and they don't like to bring us particularly brand new content anymore. You'll notice that more and more. They want to bring us just sequels, stuff we've already seen before, only more lavish, larger environments. It seems to be mostly about the visual. It's not so much about the gameplays anymore. Any elements that they would consider to be, what do you call that? Innovation. Yeah, they don't. There's not a lot of innovation added to the sequels of today. And sometimes, you know, gamers will complain a certain game got completely ruined because they tried some new control scheme or something, and it didn't make any sense, and there weren't options to map the buttons how you wanted them or something. And it goes this way, you know, it's just what's going on with modern gaming. And of course, for anybody tuning in, this channel is about video games in general, with a preference for retro gaming. And although I do keep tabs on current gaming, just to have an idea of what's out there and what will be out there when those game systems are eventually not supported. Whether it's not supported making physical games for it anymore, or whether it's not supported by their internet servers no longer servicing that particular game anymore. And for some of you who are familiar with certain things from Microsoft, and maybe more notoriously from Ubisoft, where Ubisoft actually got in legal trouble because they weren't giving gamers enough of a noticeable heads up that at some point after you purchase the game, they'll liable to just reach in and erase it when they decide the licensing agreement is about finished. So there you go. And that's the danger of having internet-dependent consoles. You can pay for games. You know, you paid for a machine that holds a certain amount of raw memory, so you can load a certain number of games on it. And then after you paid good money for this download-only game, at some point, you know, the company has an argument with one of the publishers, and the licensing is no longer in effect. And to keep people's feathers from being ruffled, well, the people that the game companies care about, the publishers, they reach into the customer's machine and just erase the game. So, and there were some early whistleblowers, some early alert people that were kind of talking about these possibilities at the forefront, from the later PS3 era into the beginning of the PS4 era, and whatever the equivalent machines are for Xbox and whatever. They were trying to warn people that something like that would be a possibility, if they depended more on the download content and microtransactions. And I think those are two phrases too that I've started to really dislike: downloadable content and microtransactions. The highest tech game console in WYLD ELF Showcase had been, I'll have to eventually get another one, it had been the PS3, which I do not have. But when I found out how wackadoo it was with the DLC, I was very unimpressed. I mean, the graphics were nice on some titles. Other titles really didn't showcase it. But the heavy dependence on DLC, and the other thing, the thing that they got rid of Game Shark and Game Genie on the newer platforms because they felt that it might interfere with the legitimacy of leaderboards. So yeah, an amazing option that they had available to you when you purchase these items. Just suddenly in almost another boardroom meeting, howdy. Morning. In one fell swoop, they got rid of an amazing option you had just only a couple years prior. So yeah, so you no longer had access to Pro Action Replay, Interact's Game Shark devices, or the original Galoob Game Genie. And that's a sad state of affairs. Those type of devices were equalizers. They really were. There are some people that want the die-hard challenge of a game that's ridiculously difficult. And they want to play one that has a reputation of being ridiculously difficult. So when they finish it or unlock a special mode, they can brag to their friends, that, yeah, they did it on the hardest difficulty and whatever, But there's a lot of us gamers, especially the retro gamers. We got into gaming because it was supposed to be, and this might be an unusual concept, fun, relaxing. Yeah. It's a form of fantasy escapism. I mean, think about it, folks. Star Trek's holodeck, right? We're probably maybe a couple of centuries away from technology that comes close to a holodeck, but platform game systems and game systems that have the VR headset devices, that's about the closest we're going to get to that. At least in the foreseeable future. But that's what we're looking at, folks. And on the VR front, there's a lot of games, including some classic games, that are being re-released in VR format for whatever devices use them, whether it's Oculus or two of the other VR helmet things. Someone was doing one of a VR version of Resident Evil 4. And when I say Resident Evil 4, I'm not talking about the Resident Evil 4 remake. I'm talking about the original Resident Evil 4. in a VR experience. And the demos that they were showing off of that one looked amazing. It really did. To be able to control it in that way, to be able to look in all the directions you can actually look at that were not available to you during the course of the game. Not in the easy way that it's able to be accessed. And I was surprised because I wasn't sure how they were going to do that game for VR. For menu access, to access the suitcase that holds all your items and your health items. But they actually got very clever with it, and you can access that stuff remarkably fast. And because it's VR, where you're actually pointing, the aiming system in Resident Evil 4 is greatly improved. There's no stuttering laser sight, that you can barely keep it tacked on the center of your target. No, there's none of that. It's however steady your own hand is, that's how the aim is on it. Nice and steady. Very precision, actually. But I digress. Let's see, there was something I wanted to get around to talking about, but we got stuck on VR. And of course, yes, I'm a fan of the Resident Evil games. My favorite is the original Resident Evil 2. And I just want to put this out here too, because I've seen different people do comparison videos of Resident Evil 2 Remake with Resident Evil 2. I'm just going to simplify it for you folks. If you have played the Resident Evil 2 Remake and you have not yet played the original classic Resident Evil 2, then your comparison side by side is meaningless. It won't mean anything because your viewpoints are already biased. They've already been colored by a game that has fluid controls and unusually rich, colorful, current grade graphics. So of course something with controls that are more alien in nature to you, with slightly primitive graphics by comparison. But what you have to understand is what those graphics were at the time of that game's release, what the machines were capable of, and how that game was actually quite an achievement at the time. The N64 version is even more impressive. They had to do a lot of strange programming because they had to juggle the information cache on the cartridge. Basically, the cartridge was imitating 2 CD-ROMs. And if you know anything about the memory on those things, you know that you can't fit them on one cart. Morning. Hello. But yeah, you cannot fit the information from 2 CDs on one N64 cart. In fact, generally the N64 carts, memory-wise, you were lucky if you could get the full contents of a single CD onto an N64, which basically you could not. This is most noticeable, especially if you play the game Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. PlayStation version has lavish full motion video scenes, but the cartridge version on 64 those scenes are gone. All you get is some static images with some text at the bottom of each image, and the mood, the whole arrangement of the adventure is completely different, because it's not even presented in the same way almost. There was a lot of humor in the CD-ROM version for PC, computer, and original PlayStation, but a lot of that's eliminated on the cartridge version. The cartridge version, you get this ominous music, and it shows you these panels of photograph images, and then you're supposed to interpret through these images what's actually happening in the storyline. And now granted, Sub-Zero is not a great game. It's not even a good game. It's possibly the game that helped get John Tobias fired, or at least started him down the path of getting fired. See, I think that Midway was not too happy, not only with Sub-Zero, but they were not happy really with Mortal Kombat 4. They sold a few of the arcade machines, but when they did the home versions of Mortal Kombat 4, I don't think it was as big a deal as they were hoping it would be. And the way you can tell that is when they did a deluxe edition of MK4 for the Dreamcast that they called MK Gold, which was basically Ultimate MK4, basically. But they didn't release MK Gold on any other system after that. It was just only on the Sega Dreamcast. And yeah, so I think they were just not very happy about how their sales were doing. And sure, you know, it's okay for a game company to have a flop once in a while, but they were putting a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation on it. And this was before they were actually wasting a lot of the money. In the 2000s, they started wasting a lot of money at Midway, and like games that had huge budgets but didn't really go anywhere, you know, games that were minorly impressive and then they just kind of fizzled out, or the company didn't support the idea of enough sequels or anything. They tried to remake the original game Narc. There's a lot of ads to push that one. And they tried to remake Area 51 as a first-person corridor shooter instead of a railgun shooter. And it was kind of lackluster on the part of the new Area 51 and lackluster on the part of Narc, which I don't remember anybody ever saying anything good about that game or the other one. They had a game that had promise. They made two of them, actually. It was The Suffering. That was an interesting first-person shooter. It had the voice, God rest his soul, it had the voice of Michael Clark Duncan in The Suffering, The Ties That Bind. And I think the first one got released on the GameCube, but the second one only made it to the Xbox and the PS2. But the Suffering was a decent psychological first-person shooter. And I really don't think it got the accolades that it should have got. It was a decent game, but Midway was going through some problems with the money that they were shifting around with the other games. They tried to revive the Spy Hunter franchise, and they threw a lot of money into that budget, and they were doing these new 3D Spy Hunter things, and they paid famous actor, wrestler Dwayne Johnson to be the main character in one of the Spy Hunter games. And he just, you know, Dwayne did his best, but it just did not help that game for some reason. And I'm sure Midway was in kind of a panic, you know. I mean, they really chucked some money into that title, and it did not, it was not very amusing, the sales figures on that game. I think they tried to do a sequel also, but yeah, just kind of fizzled out into the ether. And there was some lackluster reception of Mortal Kombat Armageddon, and they tried to save face on that. The Wii came out, and so they released a motion control version of Armageddon for the Wii, but still, it, you know, wasn't anything to write home about as far as the sales figures. And I think it was around the time that they were doing Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, or DC Superheroes, that eventually they were just like they knew that their tank had run dry and the company was spread too thin, and that kind of brought about the end of the company, I believe. But poor John Tobias, man, Sub-Zero, MK4, and the very much ill-fated Mortal Kombat Special Forces that pretty much got him completely fired. And his friend Ed Boon, from what I understand, helped make his way under that bus, as it were. So, and that's sad, because John was very instrumental, very structurally important in the creation of the Mortal Kombat franchise in the first 3 games. So that's why Sub-Zero was such a surprise and a shocker. But it's what you can do, folks. Hopefully John Tobias will have some success in the future, and maybe we'll see some great game come out that he's associated with somehow. Alright guys, this is Wild Elf, and this was Wild Elf, or a stroll with Wild Elf. So have a good one, guys. Hope this got your interest a little bit, and if you have some questions, please put it in the comments. Please like, and if the mood pushes you, subscribe. Why not? Have a great one, folks. All right.